We'll dig in some templates and tips, some news that you can use and take back to your ministries to get started. There's a lot out there. If you just Google content calendars or communication plans, you might find more than you would want. So I just picked out a few samples, templates that I thought are really good. We'll share some of the ways that we organize our plans and some other tips and tools that you can use in your storytelling as well. So this is one particular template from an organization called HubSpot. And so there's a lot of these, consulting companies, vendors that work with nonprofits and do marketing, social media, and all of this. Most of them have plenty of services and platforms that they can sell and are very interested in selling. But to support that work, to support their services, they provide a lot of blogs, a lot of resources for free that you can start to interact with and try out for yourself. So this one, for example, you just put in a little bit of information about you and your organization. It's going to sign you up for their newsletter, which you may or may not find helpful, but then it's a free download for this template. So this is a cool one because if you download this template, it is an Excel spreadsheet with several different tabs that really, get in far to the details if that's something that you're interested in. But this is a way to just, visualize the calendar month. You can go week by week, and maybe you want to color coordinate the content that you have. So you might be able to do that by program, or by audience, or by campaign. And it's a visual way that you can start to, outline things for the day of the week, and then where you plan to share it. So if you go further for this particular download, they have tabs that get really into the weeds for social media and scheduling. So going back to the tools that are available to schedule things on social media, you can plan out, 4 posts a day on Facebook and, more than I can count tweets on Twitter, where you have somewhere you can schedule the time. You can type in specifically the message that you want to put out there. If you're linking to something, you can put the link right there. You can organize it by campaign. You can, upload the image that you want to, or, remind yourself what photo it is that you want to post with your text, and you have it all plotted out there so that, whatever time you want to carve out to start doing your social media posts, it's all there and it's all organized. It takes obviously the time up front to do that, but then you're saving yourself time when in the middle of a busy day, and then you can plan it out so that you have something that's strategic and that makes sense for your social media postings. This is aspirational for me. I have not made it to this level, although I do see the value in it and think that it would be pretty great if you could get it all organized like this. So this level of detail may not be where you're at, and that's totally fine. But if this sounds like it's doable for you, this is something that's definitely worth trying out for your social media content calendar. Another organization called Curata. If you go to this link, which you will be able to from the slides that we share, or you can just Google it as well. They did this amazing snapshot of all of the content calendar templates that are out there from all of these organizations. So if you just want to kind of browse through and see some different ways of organizing it and see if something jumps out to you, I thought that this was a pretty great resource. You can see if it's an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF or a Google Drive document, you can see what might work for you. Google Drive or some way to share a document if you have a team that you're working with so that people can update it at the same time or that everyone can view it together might be really helpful. But if it's just you, if you're the only one that's really planning the communications, one Excel spreadsheet or something like that might work for you. So these are a couple of snapshots of the templates that I use for NBA. So like I said, it would be nice to perhaps get into that higher level of detail from the previous template. But really what I'm using right now are Excel spreadsheets. And so the first one is just a calendar download that you can get from Excel. So whatever kind of style works for you. And then you can adapt it for your ministry. So what is helpful for me to organize for our social media, we have 3 sort of main mission areas or program areas for NBA's work. Incubate, which is why we're here today, working with emerging ministries. We have our Explorer program, a program that we initiate in partnership with congregations and ministries across the church, working with young adults. And then our Connect ministries, which are the ways that we connect and network with the various disciples-related health and social services across the country. So that's a broad range of programs and services and ministries that we want to cover. So for me, just one sort of straightforward way to organize it is by day of the week, so that I try to make sure that every week I'm covering and sharing stories across all of those ministries. And then I have a couple of days a week that are more free for general NBA news or things that I can share from the broader church or our other general ministries or other resources or news and updates that might be helpful. So that's a way that I've kind of organized our social media. It's not always perfect, of course. There's no hard and fast rule that a post has to be on a certain day, but that's just, one way to kind of plan and to keep it straight in my head and to organize it moving forward. I try to post once or twice a day. I don't always make that happen for various reasons, travel or events or, different things, busy day, and it doesn't happen, and that's okay too. So this is just a way that I can kind of organize it. And it's just in my shorthand, since I'm the main one who's doing it. I just plot out what it is, what topic that I want to cover. But then, I'm most of the time, sometimes scheduling or sometimes just in the moment posting on Facebook and Twitter. The second chart is a way to organize a content calendar for an email newsletter. So we have an email newsletter that goes out once a month. And so I try to plot this out for most of the year, or at least sort of 6 months, and then I'll work on the rest of the year. And it's kind of a similar approach to make sure I have a lead story every month that kind of rotates through the different mission areas for NBA. And then specific stories in those 3 mission areas, highlighting our partners, having a spotlight story on our partner ministries, or featuring reflections or videos from our Explore residents, for example, or we have various blogs and resources, webinars like this that we share out through the different mission areas as well. Then we also have room, for additional stories from the church. Typically in an email newsletter, we will have a give message or a way to support NBA, get involved with different events that we have coming up, or ways that you can always get in touch. And so those are, kind of some of the standard elements in our email newsletters. And this is very helpful because, building out your newsletters, I'm sure many of you know that can definitely be a task to sit down and put it all together. But if you have it kind of planned out, hopefully you have these stories already done that maybe you've shared out earlier in the month. They're hopefully, already on your website, or you've already shared them on social media. And then a newsletter is a way that you can put it all together. Or kind of the reverse, maybe you put it all together for your email newsletter. That's the first time it goes out, but then you can share those individual stories, by themselves on your social media as well, post them as individual posts, perhaps on your website. And so you have them in various places. So depending on how people are interacting with your website, your social media, your email, they can find these different stories in different places. And this screenshot is from a flowchart template. And this is something else that goes back to my advertising days, to be able to see a full plan for the year. This is not something that may be where you're at in your ministry. This may not be the best use of your time as you're planning out everything else. But it can be helpful to really have that bird's eye view for the whole year. You can, have the seasonality. You can have, the lectionary for us in the church, the key holidays and the key milestones that you have in your year, the major events that you have in a year. And then you can just sort of have a visual representation. You can kind of code it any way that you would need to organize it. Perhaps if you have different programs or mission areas or different campaigns that you might want to outline separately. But it's a way to sort of plot out and you can see where things overlap and see where you might have some gaps. And so I find that to be a helpful resource to have to share, perhaps with your board committee, with your leadership of your organization. It can be helpful. This is not something that I'm updating or doing every day. It's more of a quarterly or just a few times a year. I can sort of plot out the rough skeleton and then go back and actualize it, so that maybe at the beginning and the end of the year, I have this as a visual representation of the whole year's plan. So this maybe looks interesting to you. This may be not something that you would be able to accomplish. I think the weekly and monthly content calendars are definitely more helpful in the immediate to help you get into the routine, get a plan in place that you can work on through the year. Touching on analytics, we talked about the key performance indicators and how you might track the progress or success of a communications plan. And there are, some handy tools with digital media. There is no shortage of data, and, it's kind of on us to decide what are the main pieces that we want to focus on, how we can focus on those strategically and not be overwhelmed by all the data. If you have a website and you're connected with Google Analytics, that is a wealth of information on how many people are visiting your website, specific pages, how long they're staying on pages, where their navigation goes from there, where, what referrals, how people are getting to your site from social media, from other websites, from Google search, things like that. That probably could be its own webinar on how to really dig in and get into that data. So that may be something that we explore in the future. But even with things, social media and email, there are some good metrics that you can, kind of keep an eye on and see, if your communications are being effective with your audience. So, if you have a Facebook page for your ministry, for your organization, if you go to the Insights tab, that should be available to you with an organization's Facebook page, and you can see different metrics. You can put in different time periods for the past week, for the past month. You can see how many likes you're getting on your posts, what your reach is, how people are engaging with your posts, how they're sharing them. You can see views for videos and different things like that. If you can see on this slide, there's different colors for organic and paid. And so if you're doing, if you're boosting posts or you're doing some paid Facebook ads, then you can see, for example, what your reach was just organically without the pay boost. And then you can see what else you're getting from that $10 or $20 that you're spending to boost a post. So it's helpful to check in on this, maybe every quarter, a few times a year. So you can kind of see what the trends are, and you can see what time of day your audience on Facebook, what time of day they're on Facebook, so you can see when might be a good time to schedule your posts. You can see all your top performing videos, things like that. So if you haven't checked that out on your Facebook page, it's worth looking into to sort of see some of those things that you want to measure, so that you can know what kind of Facebook posts might be successful for you in conveying your message moving forward. If you have email newsletter platform, maybe use Constant Contact or MailChimp is what we use for emails. They give you a pretty good standard report to show your open rate, how many people are opening the emails that you send, and then how many people are clicking into the emails that you send. What's helpful is that, for example, on MailChimp, you can see your list average, so you can tell, how an individual email stacks up against, most of the other emails that you send to that particular list. And you can also see an industry average for a nonprofit. So you can see for each specific email and also a trend, looking back at 6 months or a year. You can see if your emails are being opened, or if perhaps that's increasing or declining. And then as well as click-through rate, how many people are actually clicking on the links in your email. That is going to increase if you have more links in your email. If your email newsletter isn't structured to have very many links in it to drive back to your website, then you probably won't see a very high click-through rate. So certain things to keep in mind as you're building an email newsletter. You can also see how many emails bounce, how many people unsubscribe for your list. Those are definitely things you want to keep an eye on to make sure you have good addresses in your list. And so that you can just, keep an eye on it, because you don't, you're spending time and energy on your communications. The data isn't everything, but it can give you some guidance on if you're spending your time well and how you might be able to improve with the messaging that you're putting out to make sure it's reaching who it needs to reach, and that they're interacting with you in the way that you would like. So really, just know that the data is there to dip your toe into if it's not something that you have done yet. Or, if you're really at the point where you have some data to really dig into, you can geek out about it and see what you can measure and see what you can improve upon moving forward. Just a few more tips that I think are helpful, particularly for social media. If you have posted pictures, you're trying to figure out, how to crop a picture so that it works on Facebook. This particular blog has an infographic that breaks down all of the specs for social media. So you know what your picture needs to be sized at for Facebook, for Twitter, for LinkedIn, for Pinterest, for Instagram. They have various examples there, which is really helpful. So then you can know, if you have some particular photos, you can figure out the best place for them or how you might need to resize them to make sure that they look good for Facebook. And this does change. I think this particular blog has updated a couple of times. So you might, take a look and make sure that you have some of the latest information until Facebook and Twitter change their minds again. This is hopefully a helpful list of some photos that are free to use. It's probably not a best practice, although we've all probably done it. To just do a Google search for an image and find a stock photo or find an image that we like and put it out there with the blog or a social media post or presentation, but probably not a best practice to try to do. So this is a collection of some sites that offer royalty-free, copyright released, open, Creative Commons type images that you might be able to use. So they're not all perfect for our church ministry nonprofit space, but some of them are. So it's worth checking out. The Wikimedia, for example, has some featured pictures, and this can be a good reference for some current events. Ayana was mentioning that she was doing some searches for photos of the women's marches. And so, there are people who have photos and put them out there and release their copyright so that they can be used for nonprofit and for sort of Creative Commons open source usages. So, and then some of these others are kind of your more traditional stock photo type sites, but they won't have a watermark, and they have some very specific details about if the copyright is released, if you need to give a credit, which most of these don't. And so I found this to be really helpful. Canva is another good tool that we've started to use a little bit. That's pretty user-friendly for the non-graphic artist to try to put together some graphics for social media or for a bulletin or for website or flyers. This can be helpful. And within Canva, which you can set up a free account, they have several free image options that you can use, or you can upload your own. So this might be worth checking out if you have been interested in using photos, but you've kind of been limited for your own photos, and also maybe for some of our ministries who, again, with more sensitive, vulnerable communities, or where we, really want to keep and protect anonymity and privacy, this may be a place that you can find some images for your materials. And lastly, just finding some sort of thought leadership and news, newsletters and different sites to maybe keep up with some marketing communications trends and best practices when we do want to put our marketing heads on. This is one example that I have liked from Bloomerang. They do a monthly nonprofit wrap up with a good collection of articles and tips specifically for nonprofits related to development and marketing and communications. it's not one that you're going to get spammed with a lot of emails. It really is typically just once a month. And, you know, I think we probably all relate to getting so many newsletters and wanting to read it, but just filing it away or deleting it if we're too busy. That certainly happens to me. But I do find that, you know, maybe if we are able to carve out just a little bit of time, schedule that time into your calendar of, okay, this is when I'm going to focus on communications or social media, and, you know, to be able to spend a little bit of time once a week or once every few weeks, specifically related to marketing or development and communications, kind of spend some time immersing yourself in that. And then you can kind of keep those tips and learnings in mind as you go through your day-to-day and as you continue to work on communication plans. So if that's something you're interested in, this might be a helpful resource for you. So any questions on any of these templates or tips or anything so far?
Yes, we do have one question from Michael. The question is, do you have suggestions about the story link or links for digital newsletters?
Sure. In general, probably the instinctual answer is shorter is better, but that, you know, isn't always realistic or doesn't always happen. Because on one hand, you know, people's attention spans may be a little bit shorter when you're reading something online. But on the other hand, whereas if you have a print newsletter or a brochure or a print piece that you definitely, you know, need to keep at a certain page length for cost purposes, so you might keep your stories shorter in print, then website or email is a place that you could have a longer form story because it's free. And so you're not, you know, restricted by your budgets there. So I can kind of see both sides. I say for online blogs, you know, maybe you try to aim for 300 to 500 words, but we have plenty of them that are longer than that. And, you know, there's some visual ways to break up long text with subheads or, you know, maybe split something into a couple of sections if you really feel like it's getting too long. For email newsletter, my preference, and I think a good best practice to think about is, you know, to have shorter summary stories, highlight stories in your email newsletter, and use that to drive back to your website. So if you do have a website that you are able to update yourself, you know, if that's accessible to you or someone on your team, I see a lot of benefit in, you know, having shorter stories in your email newsletter, maybe, you know, 3 or 4 or 5, that link back to longer content on your website. And so that is going to, you know, increase traffic to your website. Once someone is on your website, you know, hopefully they spend a little time there and maybe see other content, other information that's helpful to them. And so that helps, you know, when there's traffic to your site, when you're adding content to your site regularly, that's helping with search engine optimization and with Google searching. And so that is, you know, kind of one way that you can help keep your website active, you know, when maybe website maybe isn't something that you're updating, you know, as frequently as your Facebook page, for example. You know, but then there are other newsletters too. Maybe it's a longer letter, maybe it's 1 or 2 longer stories, and then that's, you know, what your audience is used to getting or interested in getting, you know, at once a month or whatever the interval is for the newsletter. So, you know, there are definitely different ways you can do it, and you can kind of maybe experiment a little bit if you're able to look at the metrics and the analytics from the email or the analytics on your website. And maybe you can kind of see where people are spending the most time, what links are getting clicked, and then you can kind of optimize and go from there with your future emails or your future website posts.
Casey, 2 things. One, you said 3, 4, or 5 might be ideal. Did you mean 3, 4, or 5 small short stories, or 3, 4, or 500 words?
For an email, maybe 3 to 5 stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this question is actually for all of you who are paying attention. I'm going to launch a poll right quick. Casey talked about analytics, and Larry and I have, as we talked with Casey and talked about some of the things she was going to share today, we wondered if you would be interested in something in depth in analytics. So, because as she said, we can go way into the weeds and totally geek out on this. And so if that's you, let us know. That'll be something for us to think about as we're planning webinars for the rest of the year, because we understand it is both super helpful to know if people are responding to your website, how they're responding to your newsletter, if they're opening your emails, but also can be really heavy to hold and a lot of trouble that you just can't balance with the rest of your work. So I'm just going to let you guys vote on that. Just a few more of you that I'd like to see vote, and then we'll file that information away as we plan our future calendar.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the poll so that you can move on, Casey, but I'll let you all see the results as well, and then I'll clear it from the screen.
Very good. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, just to wrap up from here, again, to say a little bit about NBA and our mission. We talked about it at the beginning. NBA has been at this for 130 years, which is kind of crazy. The ways that we have worked have changed, but the core of the ministry has stayed the same. And so this mission statement is an expression of our commitment to the church today. It's a lot of words, but what I love about it is what I've underlined here. These action words and these key parts of our mission statement are about our ministry, but they also relate to marketing and communications, to storytelling. And so, I try to connect my work specifically to our mission, that if we're doing our work well, hopefully we are inspiring, we are connecting, we are accompanying, we're creating communities, and we're advocating. And so those are, tenets of our mission that personally I hold in my work, and that I draw inspiration from the work that you all do in your ministries across the church. And I think that hopefully you are able to make similar connections between storytelling and communications and the ministry and the mission that you hold in your organizations. These are some of the, the tactical ways that we are telling stories for NBA and with Disciples Health and Social Service Ministries. Hopefully you've seen some of our stories here. And if you haven't, these are some of the ways that you can continue to connect and engage. We're always looking for more ways to tell stories, how to tell them better, having more people in the church engage and experience health and social service ministry across the church, highlighting partnerships and collaborations, and having a call to action, how congregations and individuals can get involved and support the mission and ministries of the church. And so that is why we're here, and that is why why we want to focus on storytelling and communications in the church. To close, you may be familiar with Chimamanda Adichie and the danger of the single story, which she explores in this TED Talk. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. This is something that we referenced in NBA's impact report last year. We recognize the danger of a single story. One story that doesn't fully represent the richness and complexity of our organizations, of our communities, of our church. The Christian Church Disciples of Christ is a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. And we need all of our stories to tell that collective story. But that's a big job. That's the challenge. It's important and it's hard, for all the reasons that we touched on at the beginning of this. And so that's why I think it's helpful to have a communications plan, to help make our storytelling more effective, more strategic, and more whole. It's not something that, we're going to solve in 1 hour today, or one meeting. But hopefully there are some things that you heard today that are helpful, that you can take away and think about implementing in your ministry, in your congregations. And at NBA and the Incubate Initiative, we're here to keep learning and working at it with you. So Really appreciate you taking some time in your afternoon and evening to spend on this topic, and we look forward to continuing to connect with you. So, thank you all.
Well, thank you, Casey, for all of your wisdom, for sharing with us. I wanted to bring attention to everyone to let you know that we will send the recorded version out soon, along with the slides. And I also put a link to the resource bank that we have on our website. So it has other articles written by Casey around the communications planning, which may be helpful, and then other resources as well for social entrepreneurs who are starting out and looking for resources and ways to connect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
So this is it for us today, I believe. I hope you had a good time. Thank you for those of you who stuck around to the end, just kind of watching the numbers. We didn't have a lot of attrition at the end, so I feel good about that.
Yes.
But yes, indeed, do look forward to the things that Larry spoke about, and do visit us on our website. We're so glad you decided to join us, and we thank you for all the thank yous that are popping up now on chat. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.